Winter, 1943. The wind howls across the frozen mountains of Norway. In the distance, under a pale moon, 6 figures move silently through the snow. They glide on skis, carrying rifles and backpacks heavy with explosives. Their breath freezes in the air. The temperature has dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. They are hungry, exhausted, and far behind enemy lines. But they keep moving, because the fate of the free world may depend on what they're about to do. This is the story of Operation Gunnerside, the mission that stopped Hitler's atomic bomb. In 1940, Nazi Germany invaded Norway. Within 2 months, the country fell under German control. But high in the Telemark Mountains, hidden within a deep valley near the town of Rjukan, stood an enormous concrete structure, the Vemork hydroelectric power plant owned by the company Norsk Hydro. To most, it was just an industrial facility that produced fertilizer. But buried within its operations was something rare and vital. Heavy water. Heavy water, or deuterium oxide, is almost identical to regular water, but it contains a heavier isotope of hydrogen called deuterium. It may sound like a minor detail, but to physicists in the 1940s, it meant everything. Heavy water could slow down neutrons inside a nuclear reactor, making it possible to sustain a chain reaction, the foundation of a nuclear weapon. By 1942, Allied intelligence had confirmed a chilling fact. The Germans were trying to build an atomic bomb, and the heavy water produced at Vemork was critical to their success. At the heart of Germany's nuclear project was Werner Heisenberg, one of the world's most brilliant physicists, a Nobel laureate who had once helped define the laws of quantum mechanics. Working under the Nazi regime, Heisenberg and his team were trying to design a reactor that could produce plutonium for a weapon. Without heavy water, their experiments would fail. With it, they could change the course of the war and history itself. If the Nazis built the bomb first, they could devastate London, Moscow, or Washington. So in London, the British government decided that Vemork had to be destroyed, at any cost. The job fell to the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, a shadowy British organization created by Winston Churchill to set Europe ablaze. The SOE had already carried out sabotage missions in France, Greece, and the Balkans. But Norway's rugged terrain and brutal winter made this mission unlike anything before. The plan was simple in theory, but suicidal in execution. Send a team of commandos to infiltrate Norway, reach the Vemork plant, destroy the heavy water chambers, and escape. The first attempt, Operation Freshman, launched in November 1942. 2 British gliders, carrying engineers and explosives, were towed toward Norway by Halifax bombers. But high winds and poor visibility caused disaster. Both gliders crashed. Those who survived were captured by the Gestapo, tortured, and executed under Hitler's infamous commando order. The mission had failed, but the need to destroy Vemork was greater than ever. That's when Operation Gunnerside was born. This time, instead of sending large teams, the SOE would rely on a small group of Norwegian resistance fighters, men who knew the mountains, the snow, and the enemy. The team was led by Joachim Rønneberg, a 23-year-old lieutenant from the Norwegian army who had escaped to Britain after the invasion. He was calm, intelligent, and utterly fearless. Joining him were 5 other commandos, Knut Haukelid, Fredrik Kaiser, Kasper Edlund, Birger Strömsheim, and Trond Sannes. All young, patriotic Norwegians trained by the SOE in sabotage, skiing, and survival. Their code name, Gunnerside, came from the village in Yorkshire, England, where they had trained for months under harsh conditions to prepare for this mission. But before Gunnerside could act, there was already a small team waiting for them in Norway. The Grouse Team, 4 men who had parachuted into the mountains months earlier to prepare for Freshman. After that mission failed, They were stranded. They spent the winter living off moss, bark, and the occasional reindeer they managed to hunt. By the time Gunnerside arrived, they had been surviving in sub-zero temperatures for months. When the two teams finally met in the mountains in February 1943, it was like a miracle. Exhausted but determined, they shared what little food they had, reindeer meat and coffee powder, and began to plan the attack that could change the course of the war. The men studied maps of the valley. The plant was built into the side of a mountain, with a deep gorge on one side and steep cliffs on the other. The only bridge across the gorge was heavily guarded, and German patrols monitored the area day and night. There was no easy way in. So they decided on the impossible. They would climb down the side of the gorge, cross the icy river below, and scale the opposite cliff to reach the plant's lower access route, a cable tunnel used by maintenance workers. On the night of February 27, 1943, under cover of darkness, the team set out. It was nearly 10 p.m. The temperature hovered at -30 degrees. They wore white camouflage suits and carried skis and explosives on their backs. The wind roared through the valley. The snow cut like shards of glass. Yet they pressed forward. When they reached the gorge, they began their descent, a vertical drop of several hundred meters, carrying ropes, weapons, and explosive charges. The climb took hours. Every movement had to be silent. A single noise could bring the German guards running. By midnight, they reached the river. It was half frozen, covered in thick ice. They crawled across, praying it wouldn't crack. Then they began to climb the far side, clawing their way up the cliff face until they reached the plateau behind the plant. At around 1 a.m., they were in position. The guards at the main gate were still awake, chatting and smoking near a fire. But the lower cable tunnel, their target, was unguarded. Moving silently, the team cut through a fence and crawled inside the facility. The air was thick with the smell of oil and electricity. Pipes lined the walls. They could hear the hum of machinery and the hiss of steam from the heavy water cells. Rønneberg and Kaiser led the way into the main chamber, where large steel cylinders stood in rows, the heart of the German nuclear project. The team worked quickly, attaching explosive charges to the equipment. Each detonator was set for 30 seconds. Before leaving, one of them placed a note near the control panel. It read, "We are British. Please do not punish the Norwegian workers." At 1:15 a.m., they withdrew to the tunnel. Seconds later, the explosives detonated. The explosion tore through the basement, destroying the heavy water chambers and flooding the lower levels. Vemork's production was finished. Within minutes, alarms blared across the valley. German searchlights cut through the night. But the saboteurs were already gone, vanishing into the snow. They skied through the mountains for days, pursued by hundreds of German soldiers. At one point, a blizzard saved them, hiding their tracks and masking their scent from the dogs. After nearly a week, the team split up. Some made it to Sweden, others joined the local resistance. Not one was captured. The mission was a complete success. When news of the attack reached London, the SOE couldn't believe it at first. The radio message was brief. Operation carried out successfully. Factory completely destroyed. All men safe. Churchill was thrilled. He later called it the most important single act of sabotage in the war. At Vemork, the Germans found the ruins of their heavy water plant. The equipment was destroyed beyond repair. Dozens of German scientists were forced to flee. Production never fully resumed. And although the Nazis tried to rebuild parts of the facility, they could never reach the same level again. By 1944, the Allies were advancing on all fronts. The Germans decided to move what remained of their heavy water to Germany for safekeeping. They loaded barrels onto a ferry called the SF Hydro, which would cross Lake Tinzjø, but the Norwegian resistance was watching. Knut Haukelid, one of the Gunnerside veterans, infiltrated the operation and planted explosives in the ship's hull. On February 20th, 1944, the ferry sank to the bottom of the lake, taking the last of Germany's heavy water with it. The Nazi nuclear dream was over. Historians still debate how close Hitler truly came to building an atomic bomb. Some argue that Germany's scientific and industrial chaos made success impossible. Others believe that without Gunnerside, the Nazis could have produced enough material for a reactor, maybe even a weapon. But what no one disputes is this: Operation Gunnerside changed the course of history. It delayed the Nazi nuclear program long enough for the Allies to complete their own Manhattan Project, and it ensured that the atomic bomb would never fly under a swastika. After the war, the Gunnerside team returned to quiet lives. Joachim Rønneberg became a journalist. Caspar Eidland ran a business. Frederick Kaiser served in the Norwegian Navy. Knut Haukelid continued in the resistance and later worked in film and radio. None of them sought fame. In interviews decades later, Rønneberg reflected on the mission. "We didn't think of ourselves as heroes. We did what had to be done. We were lucky. And we came home." He lived to be 99 years old. When asked whether he ever realized how important his mission had been, he smiled and said, "At the time, we just wanted to get it right. Only later did we understand that it changed everything." Today, a small museum stands at the site of the Vemork plant. The gorge is still there, silent, steep, and cold. The same cliffs that once swallowed those men in snow now echo with the footsteps of visitors who come to remember them. Plaques bear their names: Rønneberg, Haukelid, Kaiser.